Hello there, you awakening wonders. Thanks for joining me today for Stay Free with Russell Brand Oracle Special with the great Neil Oliver and Lara Logan, where we'll be talking about three defining news stories this week. First, Lily Phillips and ethics and morality and the pornographization of culture and even interaction. Secondly, Trump's acquisition of the Gaza Strip. Just empty rhetoric or the wrecking ball horror that his detractors fear? And finally, USAID, the CIA in different forms under different guises. Is that the reason that neoliberalism and social democracy has fallen away into failure and being replaced by this kind of populist nationalism best defined by the Trump MAGA movement? We'll be talking about all of those subjects and more. If you don't have Rumble Premium yet, get Rumble Premium now and use the code BRAND to get a reduction, in addition to more content from me, like me at a shooting range, me doing different interviews, me hanging around. You'll also get additional content from Glenn Greenwald and Dan Bongino and Crowder, as well as an ad-free experience over on Rumble. For the first 20 minutes or so, we will stay with you on X, YouTube, Facebook, wherever you're watching this, but then we will be at our home on Rumble. And don't worry, if you're a local subscriber, we'll continue to provide that content until you find the time to join us over on Rumble Premium, our main home. So without any further hullabaloo, ludicrousness, or needless linguistics, let's welcome to the show Neil Oliver and Lara Logan. Lara Logan, Neil Oliver, thanks so much for joining me today for Stay Free Oracles with Russell Brand, you two being the oracles in this instance. Thank you for joining us, Lara.
Russell.
Neil and I last week soldiered on as bravely as was possible without you. We felt somewhat impeded. Did quite well, didn't we?
Upholstery, as I recall.
Yes, that's right. We looked like twin denim armchairs in a club for men that you simply didn't penetrate, Lara, and it's on you. And perhaps the reason I'm using such gendered and eroticized language is our first subject today is Lily Phillips. Now, I recognise that Lily Phillips is not at the very forefront of the news cycle right this minute. And over the next hour, we will be talking, of course, about Trump's acquisition of Gaza and additionally USAID, which some people, me specifically, are calling the story of the century. And if anyone else uses that phrase, they're a plagiarist plagiarising directly from me. But first, we're going to talk about Lily Phillips, not just Lily Phillips in her capacity as an OnlyFans model. I want to tell you why, both of you, why I'm interested in Lily, and watch out for any puerility, prurience, or unwarranted attention here. I am struck by Lily Phillips because a lot is enshrined in this story. Lily Phillips famously slept with 100 people in a day, and marathon and gargantuan sex sessions are hardly news. They've existed in pornography and in culture for a long time. Something that's fascinating about Lily Phillips and the OnlyFans phenomena, though, is the normalization of the commodification of sex. We not only have the commodification of sex, which we've had, I suppose, for as long as we've had prostitution, but now we have the normalization and almost banalization of that commodification, i.e. the idea that anybody can sell sex at any time. And here's like an example that sort of really made this hit home for me. My wife told me that she heard of a fitness instructor that simultaneously does OnlyFans. And when I heard that, I thought of what it would do to me if I didn't have a consistent and robust moral framework in the form of Christ Jesus. If when I'd been any age from 14 to 30 in my single adult life, I suppose, or post-pubescent life at least, if I'd have known that you could meet a human being, interact with them at a grocery store or outside a schoolyard or indeed in a fitness class, and then you could pay money to see that person intimately expose themselves in a way that typically they only would to a loved one or a gynecologist, I don't know what that would do to me spiritually. And when I think of that ad infinitum, when I think of the phenomena of pornography, when I think of its impact, the commodification of all that is sacred, it helps me to understand something that is culturally pervasive that probably hasn't yet been correctly defined. Lara, I know you have strong views and are a strong advocate for anti-trafficking measures when it comes to women and children. I also know that you've been the victim of rape. And I wonder how you feel about the sacredness and sanctity of sex and what the commodification of sex, whether it's someone like Lily Phillips or even someone like me, who when I was a famous person was being indulgent, hedonistic, Epicurean to a ludicrous degree. What do you think is the impact of the commodification, commercialization and normalization of that commodification when it comes to the erotic? Dear Lara.
You know, Russell, I think the only thing I can tell you is what I told my children, is that they want you to believe today that you can have physical, intimate interactions, sexual interactions with people, and that it doesn't take anything from you. And I think that's just a lie. And I think that's part of the reason that Lily Phillips, in the documentary film that was made about her doing this stunt, is crying, right? She's weeping, and it's obvious that this person who, for whatever reasons, I don't know enough about her and her life and what brought her to that point, but this is a person whose soul is just being obliterated. I mean, I was lucky enough to be raised to love myself, and to have a sense of self-worth. I'll tell you what my mother told me when I was a young girl. She said, I'm just going to be honest with you. She said, if you want to come cheap, there isn't a man in this town who won't take you. She said, they'll be lining up from here to Timbuktu. And I tell you something, she said, at your funeral, you'll still be that girl. You'll be that girl that everybody took a ride on. You'll be the town bicycle that everybody loved to ride. And she said, it's up to you to put a price on yourself. Because if you don't put a price on yourself, nobody else is going to do that. And she said, and while you're at it, don't worry about letting me down. Just worry about letting yourself down. Because if you never let yourself down, you'll never let me down. And she said, and the other thing I want to tell you is if you get pregnant, she said, don't listen to anything anyone says. There's no good way out of it. Doesn't matter whether you have an abortion, whether you give your child up for adoption, whether you have to become a teen mother. She said, these are all hard choices. And these are mistakes that have a cost that stays with you for life. And she said, you don't want to be in that position. Trust me. Just don't put yourself in that position. And not everybody has a mother like that. Not everybody grows up with that sense of self-worth. And we have obviously become a society that when you take the meaning out of life and the meaning out of spirituality, if you say, well, God doesn't matter, and religion is corrupt, and priests are all pedophiles, and it's all, evil and horrible, and we're better off without it. What you essentially do is you take purpose away, you take meaning away, you really take spirituality away. This concept that you can find spirituality in nature and it's got nothing to do with God is sort of ridiculous to me. And what you do is you end up with a very sad, very rich, but very broken, empty little girl. That's what I see. When I see that little girl, I know she's 100% responsible for her actions and for her choices. She's old enough. She's made choices that there's no, and the other thing my mother would say is everybody pays the piper, right? There's no getting away from everything. There's a price for everything. And you don't get to choose if you pay it or not. You pay it. That's how it works. So she's going to pay the price and is paying the price, obviously, for her actions. But that we live in a society where people can profit off of that, all the people that are around her that are profiting off it, all the men. I would hope to God that I didn't raise a son that would be lining up to be one of those 100 men that just wants to be there. But I'm not unrealistic. I know how the world is. I just, for me, it's soulless. And I think it's indicative of the fact that we've become lost. We've lost our sense of decency. We've lost our sense of humanity. We've lost, when you're putting yourself out like that, it's physically disgusting to me. It's literally disgusting. I can't fathom it. And I have nothing but pity for all the people that are involved in elevating that and putting it out and profiting off it, because you sold your soul and you sold it to the devil. And that's between you and the devil and God, if you believe in it. But, it's an indictment on us, on us all. And it's also a warning, because this idea that you can do OnlyFans and you can do a little bit here and a little bit there, OnlyFans is grooming. And it's grooming for a much darker world, just like pornography is training. You know, pornography traffickers today, they use pornography to train kids so that they know what to do when they put them to work. That's what it's for, and that's what it's used for. And I understand if you're a person out there that says, well, what's wrong with looking at a little bit of porn or whatever? What you do in your private life is what you do in your private life. And that may very well be true. It's not for me to say. But what I do think each one of us has a responsibility to do is to look at the whole picture. And when you are raising young girls to believe that there's some kind of achievement in selling yourself and selling your body, and I mean, sex is always sold. I'm not unrealistic about that. You can't be self-righteous and say it's okay to do it in a movie with mood lighting and make it look beautiful, and it's somehow different. No, it's the same thing. It is the same thing. And so we have to ask ourselves and come to our own decisions is where we stand on that. But when you get to the point where a girl is doing that to herself and people are trying to elevate her for that, people are offering her more money and better deals and all the rest of it, there's going to be nothing left of that girl. When they're done with her, there'll be nothing left of her.
They're not only elevating her, but also simultaneously denigrating her. That formed part of the conversation between Lily Phillips and myself, which I approached openly and transparently as a person that in the past has had not a complicated relationship with sex, an exuberant relationship with sex. And I discussed that exuberance.
All right, steady on there.
I didn't know how else to describe it. I'm enthusiastic, man. By the way, actually, Lara, I heard that there was a point where that dog in your room made a low grumbling sound while out of frame, and I'm glad that the dog has subsequently been revealed, because otherwise, Lord alone knows what conclusions we might have drawn from the unseen beasts that roam.
Dog.
It was certainly alarming. If you're watching this on X or YouTube, remember that this show in its entirety is available exclusively on Rumble, and you should become a member of Rumble Premium to get ad-free content as well as additional content, including early access to the content I made. Please use the code BRAND to get access to that. Here's a small part of the conversation between Lily and myself where she talked about how she started on OnlyFans. And Neil, after that, I'd love you to come in on what you think happens to morality and the very idea of sex as sacred when it's introduced to mass technology, because I think that's an important part of this story, not just ethics and pornography, but the impact of technology on morality. Here's Lily Phillips talking about how she got into the OnlyFans.
I was like 18 and I started to hear about this OnlyFans. For me, I thought it was like the perfect job because it you know, combines something I love, sex, with, you know, a job and like, you know, being able to monetize off that and being creative. And so when I went off to university, I knew that what I went to university for wasn't quite what I wanted to do. I wasn't really sure why I went to university. I just kind of went because everyone else was. And then that's when I was like, you know, I'm going to start an OnlyFans.
Later, we'll be talking about USAID, which until pretty recently I would have considered to be one of the great controversial moments in the Trump administration. But of course, since then, there has been the Trump acquisition, let's call it, of Gaza. We'll be talking about all of that a little later. But first, Neil, I'd love your response, mate, on the Lily Phillips phenomena and the impact of technology on pornography and the impact of pornography on the human spirit, and what your reaction is to this.
I find it difficult to follow Lara talking about it because, you know, one of my basic reactions to the story is that I do believe that sex is profoundly different for men and women. Now, that's my opinion. You know, I think there's no way of making broad generalizations that, you know, that sex is just sex and that it affects men as it does women. And I do think comment on the Lily Phillips story is more relevant coming from a woman and from women, because you know, a male response to the act is profoundly different. But I suppose what I thought right away was, I think she's 23. Is that right? She's about that age, and she's obviously been in the industry for for a while, or she was younger when she started in the industry. And I'm a dad of my daughter's 21, and so anything that happens to any young woman, whatever it is, I automatically think about it in relation to mine. And so I'm well, just frankly horrified at the thought of it. And I think that there's no way. I don't think there's any way of looking at what happened to Lily in that project, in that stunt, as Lara called it, without seeing it as a violation, and then but without saying that she was in any way coerced. I'm sure we're taking it as read that she was completely compliant with the event, but looked at objectively, I heard her use expressions at certain times when that coverage that Lara's talking about, where she seemed to be distressed about what had just happened, and she was talking about sort of one in and one out, and there's no way you could listen to the testimony from her own lips without it sounded like violation. And again, I'm always just reflecting that back and thinking about it in relation to my own flesh and blood. But I think that my again, I mean, my wife, has talked with all sorts of conversations about sex over the years, for all sorts of different reasons. And she has always reiterated to me that it's very different for a woman than it is for a man. And that's always been my instinct. And I've had the testimony from people that are very close to me, very intimately close to me, that reinforces what I've always thought. And I find it very difficult in that context to imagine that a woman, a very young woman like Lily, can commodify sex in that way without taking a profound hit.
If you want to see the rest of this show, you'll have to join us over on Rumble. Click the link in the description and join us there.
Let me ask you both. Wait, can I interrupt and ask you both? Would either of you have done it? Would you have been one of those 100?